I started working at my dream job, but when I looked at the employee directory, I saw a name I didn't expect: my father's. For as long as I could remember, I had dreamed of working at the prestigious advertising agency, Talon & Gold. Growing up, I had always been drawn to the world of creativity, designing, brainstorming, creating stories that could captivate the masses. It was always my dream to work in a place where innovative ideas took center stage, where every project was an opportunity to think outside the box, to bring visions to life. The first time I saw Talon & Gold's work, I was captivated. Their ads were bold, captivating, and full of heart, not to mention highly effective. They were known for creating memorable campaigns for some of the biggest brands in the world. The company was the gold standard in the advertising world, and ever since I had seen my first Talon & Gold ad, I knew that one day I wanted to be a part of that team. So when I got the call offering me the job of my dreams, a junior creative role at Talon & Gold, I couldn't believe it. It felt like everything I had worked for had finally come to fruition. I was over the moon. The office was located in downtown, in a sleek, modern building with glass walls that offered a panoramic view of the city. The moment I walked through the doors, I knew I was in the right place. My first day was a whirlwind of new information, names, faces, and of course, a hefty onboarding process. Everyone was friendly, eager to get to know me, and I was immediately immersed in the creative process. The team was everything I had hoped for: collaborative, supportive, and incredibly talented. They were passionate about their work, and the projects I was assigned to made me feel like I was part of something special. I dove in head first, soaking up everything like a sponge. It was exhilarating, and I was certain that I had found my place. One afternoon, a few weeks into my new role, I sat at my desk, catching up on some emails and reviewing designs. My mind was buzzing with ideas when I remembered that I needed to look up some of the agency's previous projects for reference. I had heard about the internal employee directory, which was accessible on the company's intranet, and decided to take a quick glance at it. I was still getting to know everyone, and thought it might be useful to familiarize myself with some of the senior staff. I opened the directory on my computer screen and began scrolling through the names of people I had met during my first weeks. Account managers, designers, copywriters, and senior creatives. Everyone was listed by department and role. It was a pretty standard employee directory, nothing too exciting. But as I scrolled further down the list, something stopped me dead in my tracks. There, near the bottom of the list, was a name that shouldn't have been there. David Matthews, senior copywriter. It wasn't just any name, it was my father's name. I blinked several times trying to process what I was seeing. There was no mistaking it. David Matthews, my father, the man who had been absent from my life for as long as I could remember. The same man who had walked out when I was just a child, leaving my mother to raise me on her own. He hadn't been a part of my life for over 20 years, not even a phone call or a birthday card. Yet here, right in front of me, was his name listed as a senior copywriter at my dream job. I felt my heart race and a lump formed in my throat. It had to be some kind of mistake, right? There must be another David Matthews. There were probably dozens of people with the same name. I told myself that it was a common name and this was probably just a coincidence, but deep down I knew it was. I clicked on his name to open his profile, my fingers shaking slightly. And there it was, his face. A photo of him taken within the last few years, just a few inches away from the picture I had stored in my memory. There was no mistaking it now. It was him. My mind spun with questions. What was he doing here? How could he be working at Talon & Gold? How could he have gotten into this industry without me knowing? Had he ever known I was here? Did he know I had gotten the job? Did he even care? I stared at the profile, my stomach churning. Everything I thought I knew about my father, about him being an absent, distant figure, was now called into question. He had a job in the same industry as me, in the same agency I had just started working at. What were the odds? I tried to steady my breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions crashing inside me. It didn't make sense. My father had always been a mystery to me. I had no memory of him, just scattered fragments of stories from my mother. He had left when I was too young to remember much, and my mother had always kept me in the dark about him. What I did know, however, was that my father had been a talented writer. I had always assumed he was out there somewhere, living his life, but this was different. This was too close for comfort. For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every time I tried to focus on my work, my mind would drift back to the employee directory and the name that had haunted me. My father had been right under my nose this whole time. I had unknowingly joined the very company he worked at. Was this fate? A coincidence? Or had he known I was here all along? As the hours dragged on, I knew I couldn't leave this unanswered. I had to confront this. I couldn't let it fester inside me. But how? What was I supposed to say? And how would I even bring it up? The moment I saw my father's name in the employee directory, I felt like the ground beneath me shifted. The idea that he was working at the same place I had just started at my dream job, no less, was incomprehensible. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How had I never known? How had he been working here without me ever hearing a word about it? The questions swirled in my mind, but no matter how much I tried to push them aside and focus on the tasks at hand, I couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of shock. I spent the next few hours at my desk in a daze, occasionally glancing at my computer screen, but unable to concentrate on the work in front of me. My thoughts kept returning to the profile of David Matthews, my father, sitting there in the employee directory like it was just another name. But for me, it was the name of the man who had disappeared from my life when I was just a child. The man who had abandoned my mother and me, leaving nothing but a gaping hole in our family. And now he was here, working at the very company I had dreamed of working for. I had no idea how long I'd been sitting there, lost in my thoughts, but the sudden buzz of my phone snapped me back to reality. I had a message from my mom. She was asking me if I was still coming over for dinner that evening. I quickly typed out a response, telling her I'd be there and that I was looking forward to it. But then I hesitated. Should I tell her? Should I tell her that I found Dad's name at the agency where I now worked? Would she even know? I wasn't sure what kind of reaction I was expecting from her. For years, she had been tight-lipped about my father, rarely mentioning him unless I asked, and even then, her answers were always vague and filled with bitterness. But she had never told me that he was involved in advertising, much less working at a company like Talon and Gold. I hesitated. It had been years since I had seen or heard from my father. The last I knew, he was living somewhere on the West Coast, having disappeared after their divorce. My mother had never really told me much about their relationship, other than that it had been rocky, and I had only ever seen bits and pieces of their history. I didn't know what had driven him to leave us, or if there had been any closure to their fractured marriage. But now, here he was, and I had no idea what to make of it. My curiosity finally overpowered my hesitation, and I made a decision. I couldn't let this mystery go unsolved. I needed answers. I couldn't keep pretending like it didn't matter. If he was working at the same company as me, then I had every right to know why he had never reached out, why he had never tried to reconnect. Was he even aware of my presence at the agency? Had he been watching me from afar all this time? I felt a surge of anger and confusion rise within me. I stood up from my desk and walked over to the break room. I needed a few minutes to think, to try and process everything that had just been thrown at me. As I stepped into the break room, I was greeted by a few coworkers chatting casually about the upcoming client meeting. I smiled politely, but I couldn't bring myself to join in the conversation. My mind was still reeling. I stepped over to the coffee machine and filled a cup, staring at the dark liquid swirling in the mug, trying to quiet my racing thoughts. As I sipped the coffee, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to find one of my colleagues, Claire, standing behind me, smiling warmly. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. "You seem a little off today. You've been quiet, and I know you're usually more upbeat." I forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine, just a lot on my mind, you know. Claire raised an eyebrow. Anything you want to talk about? I hesitated. Should I tell her about what I had found? I barely knew her. She was a recent hire just like me, and while we had become friendly, I didn't know if I wanted to open up about something so personal to her. But there was something about the way she looked at me, her concern genuine, that made me want to talk. Still, I couldn't. Not yet. Just family stuff, I said, shrugging. Nothing big. She smiled sympathetically. Well, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I know how stressful things can get, especially starting a new job. I've been there. Thanks, Claire, I said, offering a grateful smile. I'll keep that in mind. She nodded and left, but I was still left with the gnawing feeling that something huge was about to unfold in my life, something I couldn't ignore. I took a deep breath and decided that I had to face it head on. I couldn't just keep wondering about my father's presence in this agency. I had to confront it, and the only way to get answers was to speak to him directly. The question was, how would I even approach him? What would I say? Hey, I just realized you're my father and I've been working here for weeks without knowing. It sounded ridiculous. And then there was the other question that kept lingering in the back of my mind. Does he even know who I am? I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to focus on the tasks at hand, but unable to shake the feeling that the walls of the agency were closing in on me. Every time I walked down the hallway, I found myself wondering if he was in the building. Was he in one of the meeting rooms right now? Was he in his office just a few floors above me, completely unaware that I worked here too? Or maybe, just maybe, he knew exactly who I was and was avoiding me. As the workday drew to a close, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I had promised my mother I'd come over for dinner, but part of me didn't want to leave the office. I didn't know if I could face her, not with everything that had just happened. It felt like I was living in some bizarre reality, where everything I thought I knew about my family was crumbling in front of me. I packed up my things and left, my mind still whirling. As I drove to my mother's house, I kept telling myself that I'd tell her everything, that I'd come clean about my discovery. But when I arrived, her warm smile and the smell of dinner filling the house made me hesitate. I didn't want to ruin the night with something so heavy. We ate dinner in relative silence, only occasionally talking about trivial things, her day, my work, the weather, but I could feel the tension between us. I knew she was waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to bring up whatever was on my mind. But how could I tell her? How could I tell her that I had found my father's name at my dream job? The man who had left us all those years ago. The man she never spoke of. The man who had been absent from my life. Finally, after dinner, she cleared the table, and I knew the moment had come. I had to tell her. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. Mom, I need to ask you something, I began, my voice shaking slightly. Something happened today at work, and I'm not sure how to handle it. I don't even know if you know about it, but... She paused, turning to face me, her expression unreadable. What's going on, honey? I took a deep breath. I found my father's name in the employee directory at Talon & Gold. She froze. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Your father's name, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. He's working there. He's been working there for a while. How come you never told me? My mother's face went pale. She sat down slowly, as if the weight of my question had hit her all at once. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands clenched in her lap. I didn't know how to tell you, she said softly, her voice cracking. I didn't want to ruin your life with his mess. I wanted you to have a chance at something better, something he couldn't give you. I stared at her, trying to process her words. So you knew he was working there. She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. I knew, but I didn't want you to have to deal with him. He's not the man you think he is. My heart was pounding in my chest, the weight of my mother's words sinking in like cold, heavy stones. She knew. She knew my father was working at Talon & Gold. my dream job, the job I had fought so hard to get, the place I had wanted to build my career. And yet, she had never mentioned him. Not once. She had kept this information from me for all these years. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, trying to make sense of the emotions swirling inside me. Confusion, anger, betrayal. The mixture of feelings was overwhelming. My mind raced, and I struggled to find my voice to ask the questions that were bubbling up inside me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why keep this from me? All this time I've been working at the same company he's at, and you didn't think to tell me." My mother's gaze dropped to her hands, clenched tightly in her lap. She seemed to shrink in on herself, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of my question had finally broken through the walls she had built around her emotions. "I didn't want you to carry that weight," she said quietly. "I didn't want you to feel like you had to face him, to deal with him. He left us, Rachel. He walked away when you were just a baby. I thought it was better for you to grow up without him, without his mess. I didn't want you to get caught up in it." I could feel my throat tightening. "But he's my father, Mom. I have a right to know him, don't I? To understand why he left, why he never tried to be a part of my life." She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the table, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of a napkin. It was clear she was struggling with something, some truth she had been carrying with her for years. The silence stretched on between us, and I felt my frustration building. "Mom," I said, my voice rising slightly, "you've never talked about him, not once. You always told me I was better off without him, that he wasn't worth thinking about. But now I find out that he's been working at the same company I've been working at. I don't even know if he knew I was here, but he's been here all along. And you didn't think that was something I should know." Her eyes finally met mine, and I saw a flash of something, guilt, maybe, or regret. She let out a shaky breath and spoke in a quiet, almost defeated tone. "Rachel, you have to understand. When he left, it wasn't just about him disappearing from our lives. It was everything. I was left to pick up the pieces of our broken marriage, to raise you on my own without any help from him. He was a good man once, but something changed and I couldn't explain it. I couldn't tell you what had happened between us. All I knew was that I couldn't bring him back into our lives, not after everything he did." I stared at her, my mind trying to piece together the puzzle. My father, this man who had abandoned us, who had never once tried to reach out, and who had now appeared in my life as if nothing had changed, was someone I hardly recognized. I had grown up with stories of him being a selfish man, a man who didn't care about family or responsibility. But now, standing in front of me, was a man who had somehow found his way into the world I was trying to build. It felt like a violation. "But why didn't you tell me the truth?" I pressed, my voice cracking with emotion. "Why keep me in the dark all these years? Why not tell me what happened? I had to find out on my own. Why did you think I wouldn't want to know?" Her face softened and I saw the pain in her eyes. "I didn't want you to hate him," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't want you to grow up resenting him the way I did. I wanted to protect you from that. I wanted you to have a happy childhood free from the scars of what he did. And if I had told you about him, if I had told you the truth, you would have grown up with that hatred, with that bitterness. I didn't want that for you." I felt my stomach twist in knots. I could understand her desire to protect me, but the more she spoke, the more I felt like a stranger in my own life. The foundation of everything I had built, everything I had believed about my family, was starting to crumble. My father, this man I had never known, had been living a life just as close to mine as anyone could imagine, and yet he had never once tried to contact me. "I'm not a child anymore, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "I'm an adult. I can handle the truth. You should have told me even if it hurt. I'm your daughter. I deserve to know who he is and why he's been absent all these years." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I know, Rachel, I know. I thought I was doing what was best for you, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have told you the truth sooner. Maybe you would have had a chance to build a relationship with him, even after everything that happened. But it's too late now. I can't change what's been done." Then why didn't you ever mention his job? I asked, my voice growing quieter. Why didn't you tell me he was working at Talon and Gold? Why didn't you say anything? She wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath before answering. I didn't know he was working there. I didn't know where he was, what he was doing after he left. I thought he was out of our lives for good. I thought he had moved on. But when I saw you get hired there, I couldn't help but wonder. I thought it might be a coincidence, but then I heard the name David Matthews and I knew. I knew you would find out eventually, and I didn't know how to tell you. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. My father had been right there in the same company, in the same city, working at the same agency, all along, and I had never known. And what did that mean? What kind of man was he? Why had he stayed away all these years, even though we were so close to each other in this strange, serendipitous way? Why hadn't he come forward? I don't know what to do with all of this, Mom, I said, the frustration and confusion spilling out. I don't know what to think anymore. How do I even approach him now? What do I say? I don't even know who he is. I don't know if he's changed or if he's the same man who left us. My mother took a deep breath, wiping her tears away. I don't have the answers, Rachel. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that I did what I thought was best at the time. You're grown now and you have to make your own choices. But know this, you're not alone in this. I'm here for you no matter what you decide. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I could believe that everything was as simple as she made it sound. I didn't know how to approach my father. I didn't know what I was supposed to say to him, or if I even wanted to. I'm going to have to talk to him, I said quietly, standing up from the table. I don't know how to do it, but I need answers. I can't keep living in the dark about this. I need to know why he left. My mother didn't argue. She simply nodded, and for the first time. I saw her as a woman who had made sacrifices for me, but I couldn't ignore the fact that her decision to keep me away from my father had its own consequences. And now, I had to deal with those consequences. It had been days since I learned the truth. Days since my world was shaken by the revelation that my father, David Matthews, was working at Talon and Gold, the very place where I had built my dream career. I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation I had with my mom, the walls she had built to protect me from the truth, and the reality that I was about to face someone who had been absent from my life for as long as I could remember. The questions kept swirling in my mind, growing louder with each passing hour. Why did he leave? What kind of man was he now? What was I supposed to do with the key to the mystery of my past? I couldn't avoid it any longer. The weight of my father's absence was something I had carried with me all my life, and now I had the chance to confront him. But how? What would I say to him? How could I even begin to understand why he had left without a word, why he had never tried to make contact? I had decided that I needed to meet him. I couldn't keep wondering, keep digging into this endless pit of uncertainty. I needed closure, even if it wasn't the closure I had hoped for. I spent the next few days avoiding the thought of seeing him face to face. I focused on work, threw myself into projects, kept myself busy, but even that felt like a distraction. The moment I would step out of the office, the weight of the situation would hit me all over again. I knew I couldn't keep running from it, so I made the call. Hello? The voice on the other end was rough but familiar. The same voice I had heard in my dreams, in the fragments of memory I held onto for years. The voice that had been silent for so long. Dad, I barely recognized my own voice, shaky and uncertain. I hadn't even realized I had been holding my breath until I spoke his name. There was a pause on the other end, then a soft intake of breath. Rachel, his voice trembled, almost as though he couldn't believe it either. It's been a long time. I swallowed hard, the gravity of the moment settling in. Yeah, it has. Look, I don't really know where to start, but we need to talk. I need answers. I didn't know if you'd ever want to talk to me again, he said, his voice low and hesitant. But I've been waiting for this moment. I'm not sure what I can say that will make up for everything, but I've been watching you. I've been following your career and I couldn't be prouder. I should have reached out sooner. I should have been there, but I was." His words hung in the air like a cloud of unresolved emotions, and the weight of what he was saying hit me harder than I expected. My mind raced, fighting the urge to shout at him for abandoning me, for never once trying to come back. But I pushed those feelings down. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about understanding. "I don't know where to begin," I said, my voice breaking. "I found out you're working at Talon and Gold. Why didn't you ever try to reach out? Why didn't you ever tell me?" There was another long pause. I could almost hear him struggling for the right words. "I never meant to hurt you, Rachel. I never wanted you to feel abandoned. But I wasn't the man I needed to be. I was the father I should have been. And when I left, I thought I was doing what was best for you. I thought leaving would make things easier for you. But all I did was make it worse." His words felt like a punch to the gut. He thought leaving was best for me. The man who left without a second thought, who didn't even try to make contact for all these years. Now he was telling me that he thought leaving was the right thing to do. My anger flared up again, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I grew up without you, Dad," I said, my voice raw with emotion. "I didn't have you there for birthdays, for school plays, for anything. And now here you are, working at the same company as me, and you never thought to tell me. Why now? Why didn't you say something sooner?" "I know I failed you," he said softly. "I've regretted it every day of my life. I know I can never make up for the years I lost with you, but I want to try. I want to know you. I want to be a part of your life if you'll let me." There was a vulnerability in his voice I hadn't expected, a rawness that cut through the years of silence and resentment. I wasn't sure what I was feeling anymore. My emotions were a tangled mess of anger, confusion, and something else, something I didn't know how to identify. Was it hope? Was it the faintest spark of desire to rebuild the relationship I had longed for? "I'm not sure I can just forgive you for everything, Dad," I said quietly. "You can't just show up after all this time and expect everything to be fine. But I also can't pretend like I don't want to know you. I need time. I need to figure out who you are now." He was silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "I understand. I know I can't expect you to forgive me or to just accept me back into your life. But I want to make things right. I'll give you all the time you need, Rachel. I'm not going anywhere." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. There was no easy way to process this, no quick fix, but I couldn't run from it. I had to face the truth, even if it was painful. "I don't know how to start, but I think we need to meet," I said, my voice steady. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I think it's time we talk in person." "I agree," he said softly. "When do you want to meet?" I hesitated, but then I knew the answer. It had to be soon. I needed closure, I needed answers, and I needed to face this head on. "How about tomorrow?" I said, my voice more certain now. "Can you make it to the office? I don't know how this is going to go, but I think we need to talk face to face." "I'll be there," he said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "Tomorrow then, I'm looking forward to it, Rachel." The next day I arrived at the office early, my nerves on edge. I wasn't sure what to expect. What would I say to him? How would this conversation go? I had so many questions I didn't even know how to phrase, but I had to do this. I had to face him. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out into the sleek, modern lobby of Talon and Gold. It was still early, and the office was mostly quiet, with only a few employees arriving at their desks. I walked past the rows of cubicles and glass offices, feeling like I was stepping into a surreal dream. Any moment I would see him, my father, the man who had been absent from my life for so long. My heart was pounding in my chest as I approached the conference room. It was small, tucked away in a corner of the office floor. But it was where the meeting would take place. I pushed open the door, and there he was, standing by the window, his back to me. He turned around when he heard me enter, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. He looked older, thinner, but the same man I had seen in the photograph. The same man who had left me behind all those years ago. "Rachel," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. I took a deep breath and walked into the room. "Hi, Dad," I said, trying to steady my voice. And in that moment, everything felt like it was both too much and not enough. We stood there, facing each other, knowing that we had so much to talk about, so much to untangle. There was no easy way forward, no quick fix. But this was where it began. The truth, the conversation, the possibility of rebuilding something we had both lost. It wouldn't be easy, and I wasn't sure what the future held. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had a chance to understand my past. And that, for now, was enough.